Wouldn't you love to ask an SEC coach just anything and it be off the record, but they'll tell you anything and it's just kind of off the record so that their name's not tied to it? Well, Athlon Sports does their annual SEC Coaches Anonymous Mailbag, and we're going to talk all the things that Tennessee is related to in there. What are the coaches saying about Tennessee? Josh Heupel and the Volunteers. We'll find out here on a Wednesday show.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it. This is your Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols, your go-to Tennessee podcast for Tennessee football. Each and every single day, it's on YouTube. It's on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever you find your podcast. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every day. I'm your host, Eric Kane, @_Kaner on Twitter, @Locked On Vols. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review us on YouTube. Continue to support the show wherever you listen, but especially on YouTube as well. Got a fun show coming up today. We mentioned it there in the tease in the cold open. Anonymous mailbag. What are coaches around the SEC saying about the University of Tennessee? What's the best case scenario for the University of Tennessee and every other SEC team in that regard? That's from Saturday Down South. That'll come up in segment 2. And then finally, I'll tell you some of my observations. Not a whole lot. We were only out there for about 15 minutes or so, but some of my observations from practice number 3 of fall, or practice number 2 of fall camp. And we'll get a clip that I found very interesting from Tennessee quarterbacks coach Joey Halsey. All that coming up here on a Wednesday show. So again, Athlon does this exercise each and every year to where they go around the SEC, they stay off the record, they talk to assistant coaches, they talk to some head coaches, but it's called the SEC Coaches Talk Anonymously about conference foes in 2022. And there's a lot of good stuff in there. They go, team by team, division by division, and they discuss what some of the coaches around the SEC are saying about each other. Now, here's the section on Tennessee. Here's one quote. This seems like a team that everyone's in love with, at least after one season. Anytime Tennessee does well, even if it's clearly because of a one-off situation, there's an immediate pressure to ramp back up the Philip Fulmer national title days. I mean, that is not inaccurate. I'll say that. Another quote. They're pretty easy to break down because that offense is pretty easy to break down. You're a 6-win team if your quarterback is decent. If you've got a 2 or a 3-game ceiling, if he can make some plays. Having Joe Milton as the backup is a big luxury. You don't want to be rotating them at all, but if you have an injury, you've got a guy with some game reps in the system, which is rare in the transfer portal era. That is very, very true. Here's another one on Tennessee, again from the SEC Anonymous mailbag. Overall, the defense is average at best for that division, but that's a luxury Josh Heupel's system offers because it can hide them a little bit. Again, spot the lies here. Everything's been accurate so far. It's good to have Joe Milton as your backup quarterback. It's a team that, anytime there's just a blink of success, the fan base gets riled up, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but everything gets riled up to go back to the olden days when Tennessee was a true power. Maybe the system is simplistic, but that's something that we've heard about Josh Heupel's system. That's something we've heard about him coming from UCF to Tennessee. And again, that's something we talked about with David Cutcliffe at SEC Media Days about the sustainability from his offense from one year to the other, and if that's going to be a thing. So anyway, so far, I kind of agree with a lot of things that have been said right now. Maybe not the 6-win team if you have a decent quarterback, but we'll see. Let's keep moving on. Quote, they're missing a really dynamic playmaker right now. Finding that at wide receiver with one of those signees could be huge for them, obviously, whether that be Squirrel White, whether that be Caleb Webb, Chaz Nimrod. Those are the freshman wide receivers they might be mentioning. But of course, Brew McCoy, the transfer, Jalen Hyatt needs to step up. Could it be Jimmy Holiday? Tennessee was at its best when it had Cedric Tillman on one side, had Javonte Payton on the other, and Bayless Jones right in the middle. So, we'll see exactly what that means for Tennessee. We'll keep going on. More quotes. When the staff came in, there was a pretty strong criticism of the simplicity they used at UCF. They did a good job of adjusting in some games, but it'll be interesting to watch how advanced they get and with the wrinkle with their stuff as the defenses get more and more tape on them. Okay, so we just spoke on that just a moment ago. One more. Give them credit. They've got an identity for the first time in years, and the scheme has kept them in games against teams with way more talent, especially at places where it matters the most in the league, like the line of scrimmage. I've said this from the get-go. I mean, this isn't a let me pat myself on the back, but Tennessee will be in games. Tennessee will have a chance to win every single game it plays. Why? Because the offense is so fruitful. Now, it's a new year. Every single time you're kind of starting over, so we'll have to see this offense get ramped up again. But typically, when this offense is humming, when it's going, it's scoring points. If you're scoring 37 points a game, 38 points per game, I don't care how bad your defense is, you're going to have an opportunity to win those football games. Case in point, the 2021 season. Purdue, defense is awful, almost won that game. Kentucky, the defense is awful, you won that game. Pittsburgh, the defense was not great. You lost that game by 3 points. You have a chance to win some of these games. Now, the goal was obviously to, on the other side of that, improve defensively, create some turnovers, play some complementary football, and see if you can pull out some more wins. So I don't have a huge issue with a lot of what's said right now from this anonymous mailbag here from Athlon Sports. This is anonymous, is coaches talking anonymously on other teams around the SEC, assistant coaches. I'm sure there's some head coaches in here as well. Kind of slighting the offense a little bit. But again, that's something that we've known. And if you watch the tape from last year, sometimes Hendon Hooker sitting back there looking. You got Velus Jones and Cedric Tillman running routes on one side of the formation. And then on the other side, you have Javonte Payton just standing put. He's not even moving. I hate that. Can't stand that. But we saw that at points in times a lot last year. It is a very simplistic offense, but because of the tempo, because of the pace, you're still catching people off guard, and you can still get creative with that. And you move the tight end around, do some different things, and we saw some of that a little bit last year as well. But I don't have any huge issue with what they were saying there. Saying that because of this offense, they're kind of criticizing the offense a little bit, but saying because of the offense, you're a 6-win team no matter what. If your quarterback is decent, I mean, 6 wins is nothing to write home about. But if your quarterback's just decent and your team sucks, I mean, 6 wins, boom, right there. That's bowl eligibility. And again, that's not the mindset you want to be in. But I thought that was kind of counterproductive because at the basis, if you're getting 6 wins, you can probably pull out a couple more wins and have a decent season like what Tennessee kind of did last year. So do we have anything wrong with what's being said right now? I truly do believe for the most part, what was said here is kind of spot on. So found that a little interesting. I want to read one from Kentucky. So again, coaches around the SEC talking anonymously. This is on Kentucky now. What you saw in Liam Cohen's offense was really impressive. Former offensive coordinator, now back in the NFL. At first, a lot of the defenses in the league were caught off guard, but honestly, even as it got to weeks 9, 10, and 11, you saw them confusing teams. That was a system success. So all the pressure now is on the new guy to keep that pace. They went and got a new guy from the NFL as well because he's from that same NFL tree. No one thinks they'll be able to look any different. The problem is that you don't have Wan'Dale Robinson, and the offensive line lost a lot, so the odds are stacked against them. They need to figure out their go-to guys this summer and keep the scheme transition simple. System success. Don't tell Will Levis, who's projected to be a top, first-round quarterback next year by all these plaudits, and it's a straight-up love fest. Everybody loves Will Levis right now, but system success. Don't tell him that. That is very true. You don't have Wan'Dale Robinson right now, and that's that's huge. I mean, he was an All-American last year. Another quote on Kentucky. Defensively, they're never nationally recognized or anything, but they're always very effective. They do a good job of keeping in front of them the passing game. Very, very true. There's one more. Okay, here we go. This is a good one. They're approaching a dangerous area in terms of expectations. There's going to be a point in time where the money they're paying Mark Stoops is going to come up with more than just being happy with a bowl bid. For a long time, everyone in the industry has said that Stoops had the best job in college football, but that can't last forever. Can they build a division-winning program, or will he find another job before that time comes? There's also competing in a division that's getting a little bit better each year. You can always look at the games against Tennessee, South Carolina, and Missouri as good measurements. All three of those programs are improving season by season. I couldn't agree with that last one more. Kentucky is a basketball school. It will always be a basketball school. It's forever been a bottom dweller in the SEC in terms of football. But something, my colleague, and we heard from him on the show on Monday, Ben McKee, has been at him about the last couple of years, and I couldn't agree more. And I've said it, and a lot of you guys don't like it. Forget the logo on the side of the helmet and look at what's happened the last 5 years and look at the results. Kentucky is a solid football team. A solid football team. Do I think Kentucky could ever win the SEC with Mark Stoops right now? Absolutely not. I don't. I'd be shocked. I would. But it's a solid football team that can come in and beat you if you're not playing well. It can beat Florida. It's beat Florida twice in the last 5 years. It can beat some good teams in this conference if you're not if you're coming in and just going through the motions. Why? Because you play great football at the line of scrimmage, you play great defense, and you always have a good run game. And now with Will Levis, though it might be system success, you do have a capable quarterback that can burn you a little bit. So I couldn't agree with that more. When will that line be crossed? For the longest time, again, they're just happy to be competitive in football. But you're getting to a point now to where Mark Stoops really got this thing going to where it's like, okay, I'm a basketball school, but you know, you're paying them a lot of money, paying them a whole lot of money. So I thought that was very, very interesting. Athlon Sports, anonymous coaches talking conference foes around the league. A lot of good stuff in here on Tennessee that I found interesting. And of course, I read off some stuff from Kentucky that I found interesting, but there's stuff on every single team from the SEC. Go ahead and check it out if you are bored sometime. Best case scenario for the University of Tennessee in 2022. We'll discuss when TSL comes back. BetOnline TSL. This is Locked On Vols. TSL is the morning radio show I work on. Too many jobs. BetOnline.net, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your sports betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the number one source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews, news about every single league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They've got you covered. Reality television as well. Head on over to the website today. That's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn about all the latest trends and all the action. Great time with sports football right around the corner. BetOnline.net, it is where the game starts. Want to welcome you guys back into a Wednesday Locked On Vols, and really do appreciate you guys for hanging out with us here today. Tennessee right in the middle of fall camp. Well, not right in the middle, kind of just started, but practice number 3, depending on when you're listening to this, maybe it's ongoing right now, maybe it's coming up a few hours, maybe it's already in the books. Practice number 3 out on the Haslam practice field, going to take place at 9 o'clock Wednesday morning, and continuing to hear from coaches and players, and that's the beautiful thing about camp. We get to hear from a lot of people. And I'm going to play a comment from Joey Halsey, Tennessee's quarterback coach, coming up in segment 3 that I thought was really interesting on quarterback Hendon Hooker. So stay tuned for that. Let's now go to Saturday Down South. Nice little article they put up earlier this week. The best case scenario for every team in the SEC. Best case scenario for the University of Tennessee. What's it say? 9-3 with a New Year's Six Bowl. It's kind of hard to argue that right now, right? I mean, Tennessee, I've said it countless times. I think there's only 2 games on the schedule that Tennessee, I can't remember if it was on the radio show or if it was on the podcast yesterday, but there's only 2 games on the schedule that I think Tennessee can't win. I don't think Tennessee's beating Alabama this year. I don't think Tennessee's beating Georgia this year. You know, be mad at me all you want. It is what it is. I'm a realist. I'm going to tell you how it is every single time, at least how I think it is, which sometimes I understand is not always correct. But I think Tennessee's talented enough to beat Pitt, to beat Florida, to beat LSU, to beat Kentucky, to beat all those other toss-up games. But the thing about college football is, you know, unless you are an established team with a lot of depth and you've been there, done that, you don't always win those games. You can't count all those games just because you can win that game or you're talented enough to win that game or you might even be favored in those games. That's not how football works. That's not how sports work. I have Tennessee at 8-4 because I think Tennessee's going to, you know, stumble somewhere. And, you know, it's going to be those 2 games, LSU, and then, you know, can Tennessee sweep the rest of Florida, Pitt, and Kentucky? I don't know. You know, we'll have to see. But best case scenario for Tennessee, Saturday Down South has them a 9-3 at a New Year's Six Bowl. That's a loss to Georgia. And that's a loss to Alabama. Is that a loss to Florida? Is that a loss to LSU? Is that a loss to Kentucky? Is that a loss to Pitt? Is that a loss to South Carolina? Don't know. But that's just one loss in all those teams. I mean, that's a pretty solid year for Tennessee. This is what Saturday Down South article says on the University of Tennessee. Tennessee's ceiling has always been limited by the 3 rivals on the schedule. Yeah, no duh. In post-Philip Fulmer era, now this stat is mind-blowing. Buckle up. Get ready. In post-Philip Fulmer era, the Vols are combined 4-35 against Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. Let me say that one more time. 4-35 combined against Florida, Georgia, Alabama. It's mind-blowing to even hear that, but when you think about it, Alabama's won since, 08 straight, 07 straight? Georgia, Tennessee's on a 6-game losing skid to them, 5-game losing skid to them. Florida, you had to win in 2016. Before that, it was all the way in 2004. I mean, goodness gracious, it has been so long. That's where we are right now. That's where recruits have lived through. And you're talking about Tennessee and the power T and everything. And I talk to recruits all the time. They're like, yeah, history. They got history, yada, yada. They got Peyton Manning. I want to be like, buddy, you weren't even alive when Peyton Manning was at Tennessee. I'm not even old enough to remember Peyton Manning at Tennessee. And I'm much, much, much older than you, So, gosh, 4-35, that's mind blowing. But when you sit there and think about it, okay, well, that makes a whole lot of sense, right? We'll go on to say this is from Saturday Down South on Tennessee. Anybody saying they have 11-1 upside would be ignoring that about their losses to the rivals. I'm acknowledging that while also saying with how explosive the offense should be, the Vols can hang with anyone, something we talked about in the last segment. Running it back with Hendon Hooker, Cedric Tillman, and Jabari Small means that Tennessee has a best case scenario of finishing with the number one offense in America. I do agree with that. They very well could. The last Power 5 team to win 10 games with a non-top 90 defense was 2018 Oklahoma, who reached the college football playoff but ultimately couldn't slow down Alabama's offense. Remember that? So what they're saying is no matter how great your offense is, if your defense is the bottom half of FBS, you're going to run into trouble. Oklahoma got to the college football playoff, but when they took on Alabama, couldn't slow them down. I do remember that. I'm sure you do as well. Tennessee doesn't have that type of potential playing that schedule, but reaching the program's first New Year's Six BCS bowl game since 1999 would be a monumental feat just 2 years removed from the Jeremy Pruitt fallout. I couldn't agree more. So some mind-blowing stats here. 4-35 against the big three since Philip Fulmer has left the program. 4-35 against Florida, Georgia, and Alabama post Philip Fulmer as your head coach. And then Tennessee's not played in a New Year's Six BCS Bowl since 1999. Holy freaking crap. So best case scenario, Tennessee 9-3 playing in the New Year's Six Bowl game. I couldn't agree with this even more. I couldn't agree with this anymore because again, Tennessee, in my opinion, is not beating Alabama. Tennessee is not beating Georgia. Tennessee can beat LSU. Tennessee can beat Florida. Tennessee can beat Pitt. Tennessee can beat South Carolina. Tennessee can beat Kentucky. But are you going to go 5 for 5 in all those games? That's not how college football works for teams like Tennessee right now. For teams like Alabama and Georgia, yeah, that works for them. But they're in a different area code right now, a different stratosphere right now than where Tennessee is getting better. It's getting better in depth. It continues to get better, but they're not there yet. So I agree with that. Let's go on and look at some other teams around the SEC. According to Saturday Down South, best case scenario for every team. Alabama, 12-0 national champs. Duh. This is best case scenario. Arkansas, 10-2 New Year's Six Bowl. Interesting. 10-2. Auburn, 8-4 Florida Bowl berth. That sounds about right. Florida, 8-4 Florida Bowl berth. Interesting there. Okay. George, so what we're saying is the ceiling or the floor is much higher for Florida than Auburn, but the ceiling is the same, if that makes sense. Like Florida's got more talent on the roster. Florida's got a decent quarterback, right? They've got a pretty good quarterback there, but still trying to figure things out in year number one, Billy Napier. The floor is higher, but the ceiling is still here. Auburn's floor is way lower, but the ceiling is still here, if that makes sense. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm using all these hand motions here, but 8-4 Florida Bowl berth for both Auburn and Florida, best case scenario. Georgia, best case scenario, 12-0 national champions. I don't think that'll happen, but I agree. That is the best case scenario because they have a team that could do that, okay? Kentucky, 9-3 New Year's Six Bowl game. I agree with that. LSU, 9-3 New Year's Six Bowl game. Don't agree with that. They've got talent much like Florida, very much paralleling each other from the West and the East Division. But not right now, not in my opinion. Missouri, 7-5 Mayo Bowl. Yeah, I agree with that. Mississippi State, 9-3. What? 9-3 New Year's Six Bowl. Yeah, right. You're not beating the likes of Alabama or the majority of the likes of Alabama, of Texas A&M, of LSU, of Ole Miss, of Arkansas. Get real. Will Rogers, so much respect for him. Best case scenario, Mississippi State is not sniffing the 9-win season and ain't sniffing the New Year's Six Bowl game. That's not how that works. Get out of here, Saturday Down South. Ole Miss, 8-4 Florida Bowl bar. So you should flip those. You should flip those because Ole Miss, though it's lost a lot, it added so much talent. But I don't think that it will, but I would flip those if we're talking best case scenario. South Carolina, 8-4 Florida Bowl berth. Interesting. Tennessee, of course, we mentioned 9-3 New Year's Six Bowl. Texas A&M, 10-2 New Year's Six Bowl. I agree with that. Vanderbilt, 4-8. Yikes. Vanderbilt, 4-8. That is just not fantastic. All right. So great content there from Saturday Down South. Fun exercise. What do you think Tennessee's best case scenario is for the 2022 season? Is it 9-3 with an SE with a New Year's Six bowl game? I think that sounds about right. Before that should become just the norm here as you venture on year 3, 4, and 5 with Josh Heupel, depending on how much the Volunteers take a step in year 2. So good stuff there. We got more stuff coming up. My observations from Tennessee football practice number 2 on Tuesday, and a quote that you got to hear from Joey Halsey on quarterback Hendon Hooker. All that's coming up and more as we conclude a Wednesday Locked On Vols coming up next. We got a final segment left here on this Wednesday show. Guys, thank you so much for all the comments on YouTube, the DMs, the likes, the subscriptions. You guys are awesome, really helping the algorithms out there. Really, really do appreciate you guys. I want to quickly give my observations. I was at Tennessee football practice. I'm at Tennessee football practices during camp. And I want to tell you what I saw from day number 2 here on a Tuesday of yesterday. So, again, notable players in red non-contact jerseys. Christian Charles, as I mentioned yesterday, he was back in there with another red jersey on. He was going through individual drills. We'll have to get an update on him whenever we talk to the head ball coach again. Jalen Wright didn't have a red jersey on, but he was off to the side, working with a trainer. So he is not getting normal running back work in right now, which makes that running back room even more smaller right now because you got Jabari Small and then you got 2 freshmen, which is not the situation you want to be in, but regardless, it's where you are right now. Watching the defensive line go through the bag drills, you can easily see the burst from freshman Joshua Josephs, from James Pierce. Those guys both need to add some weight, but you can see the intangibles there for sure, and I think that they're going to be some good players. Defense went through some tackling and turnover circuits. Linebackers did some stance and steps from under the cage. Defensive line did the bag drills. Offensive line did start stance and steps and all that type of stuff. When we were there as part of the individual periods. Just a couple of observations I'm just going to rattle off here. Amari McNeil, who again I don't believe will play any type of factor for Tennessee, a defensive lineman, but I do want to point out he has transformed his body. He looks completely different. He looks like a football player now, so that's good to see. Tyler Barron and Byron Young really leading that defensive line group, first up in the drills every single time, always encouraging vocally during in between drills, coaching those guys up. So that's good to see. Rodney Gardner is baptizing those true freshman defensive linemen in a hurry. He is in midseason form, as you'd expect, there being Rodney Gardner. Offensive line looked pretty much the same on the first group, left to right. You had J.J. Crawford and Gerald Mincy splitting time at left tackle, but then you had you had Jerome Carvin, Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins, and then you had Darnell Wright kind of down the line. Thought that Walker Merrill looked pretty comfortable running some routes, moving from the slot, playing more outside this year, at least from what we've seen so far. Thought Brew McCoy looked good. When I was watching, I must have missed something. I could have missed something, but when I was watching, I didn't see a ball hit the ground whenever it was thrown his way, so that was good to see. You had Jacob Ward that made a really nice catch over the middle and routes on air, and Alex Golish got a little animated about it. It was high, and he just went up there and slapped it down. And it looked really, really smooth. Gave a yes sir to that. Thought Jalen Hyde, made a really nice catch on a ball that was thrown behind him over the middle. So a couple of things that I kind of picked up on, and that's really much it. Again, guys, we go to practice. It's better to be there because you do see something, but they don't give you much. They gave us 50 minutes on day 1, and then now we're down to our normal about 18, 20 minutes. But keep in mind, about 5 minutes, 6 minutes of that is them stretching. And then after that, they do the same individual drills every single day. So really, we're not seeing an awful lot. But I did want to kind of pass along because I know you guys are hungry for any type of football content with the team being back out there and the boys hitting the practice field, if you will. So I wanted to pass that along. Joey Halsey, Tennessee's quarterback coach, met with the media on Tuesday, and obviously was fielding questions about the quarterbacks and whatnot. And the question was asked, what were your first impressions of Hendon Hooker last year when you met him? And he kind of said, hey, he was very, very businesslike, very tight, very, didn't look like he was having fun because he was so serious all the time. And then Jimmy Himes, the Sports Animal, one of my colleagues, followed up and said, well, how did you know all that? Kind of what did you do to kind of get him to have fun and ultimately start playing the way that he did? Give this a listen. Get a little response here from Joey Halsey on his quarterback Hendon Hooker and how Hendon went from being uptight and serious to playing loose and having fun and ultimately finding some confidence on the basketball court. Give this a listen.
because he was exclusively business-minded when we got here, and everything about him was tight, and we had to I'm like, this is an extremely talented athlete that's not showcasing any of his athleticism. So we had to just bend that mind a little bit and work on his mind every single day to, yes, this is football, this is fun, but you can be serious, but you have to do it in a fun way. It doesn't mean not paying attention. It doesn't mean being completely goofy out there on the field and not having a mindset that we have something to go do, but there's a way to do it in which you can still enjoy the game that you're playing. And when he started doing that, he started loosening up, and that's when you saw the growth in Hendon last year.
How did you notice it?
Which part?
What occurred to make you notice it?
Because I noticed that being serious every single moment of his life didn't work for him. And I watched him when he was messing around playing basketball. He'd get a big smile on his face, and nobody could guard him. I told him last year in the summer, I said, I want you to play football like you play basketball. Because when he plays basketball, he knows he's the best player on the court.
I never heard that before, but that makes so much sense, right? I mean, I can see that making sense. That Hendon Hooker, he's so serious, he's so thoughtful, he's so business minded and focused that there's no time for fun. There's no time whatsoever. But playing pickup basketball and knowing that he's the best one out there, like Joey Halsey says, and hey, that's how I want you to be on the football field, and being able to play loose and play friendly and being a leader, and then making some plays, and that confidence just continues to grow and grow and grow. It's kind of where Hendon Hooker is right now. And so I wanted to play that clip. Thought that was really, really interesting. Man, he has come leaps and bounds since when we saw him in the spring, and of course spring of 2021. He was brand new to the program. He was a transfer from Virginia Tech who got brought in by the previous coach who just got fired. And so his head was probably spinning everywhere. But Hendon Hooker looks to be like just a completely different guy from that point in time. So that's really, really cool to see. All right, that'll do it here for this Wednesday show. I had a couple of really nice breakdowns from some good articles. The SEC coaches talking anonymously around the league about the league. That was from Athlon Sports. Best case scenarios for Tennessee and, of course, all the other SEC teams. That was from Saturday Down South. And then some practice observations here in the final segment. Guys, thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to Locked On Vols. Camp is here. Continual updates. I'm there. Tune in every single day. Make Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. Your second listen, check out Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy. Does a fantastic job, but it's got to be your second listen, because your first listen, your first watch on YouTube is always going to be Locked On Vols. Guys, thank you so much. Hey, same time, same place. We'll flip a chair and we'll do it tomorrow. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.